Alright guys, one thing I wanted to go over today was starting a fire, and actually one specific way of starting a fire, and that is starting it with the tepee fire and using only one match, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen people just struggle to start a fire using dozens of matches, you know, like and this weird shit like paper and stuff like that. They just don't know what they're doing. They start and it takes forever. They waste a bunch of matches, which sometimes doesn't matter, but if you're in a survival situation, whether that's a match, a lighter, or especially if it's like a little flame that you started with a bow drill or a fire piston or a blast match or anything like that, you want to be able to start it right away. You don't want to have that go out and start all over again, because you may not even be able to do it. And if it's in a survival situation, maybe you're cold and wet, maybe you got to cook some food, maybe, you know, who knows what, but it's going to be important. So if nothing else, just save time and matches. So the most important thing that people mess up when, actually there's two important things. They're tied for first because you can't really have one without the other. But the two most important things to consider when selecting your first fuel is size and the dryness. And I say they're tied for first because even if you have one, if you don't have the other, it's not going to work. If you have the right size but they're wet, it won't work. If you have bone dry but it's a big fat stick, you're not going to be able to light it from one match or one little flame. So when I'm talking about size, they should be no bigger than a matchstick. Someone once told me that matches were designed to light matchsticks, and that makes perfect sense. It's not being obtuse. It just gives you an idea of you can't take something the size of your thumb, your finger, or even the size of a number 2 pencil and light it with a matchstick. Even if it's bone dry, it's just too big. So you have to start with things that are from basically the thinnest sliver of twig that you can find up to a matchstick and no bigger. That should be the first size that you get a group of those sticks that are no bigger than a matchstick, preferably about half the size of a matchstick. And you want a bundle of those about, like, you know, big spaghetti bundle or something like that. That's how many you want. Then the next size of sticks should be between that and about half the size of a number 2 pencil. So from matchstick to like double matchstick. And then a third group would be anywhere from half a matchstick to just bigger than a number 2 pencil. And I'll give examples of that. And that's all you need. And you don't even need, when you're starting from a flame, you don't need tinder, because tinder is designed to catch a spark. Once you already have a flame, you can go right to the wood, as long as it's dry and as long as it's the right size. So, and the method that I prefer to use for fire is the tepee method. It's the easiest to set up, and it's natural. Just the shape just works with the way that the heat and the flame rises, and you can. It has an opening in the front where you can put your match or put your little flaming tinder bundle, so it just naturally works. There's other methods you can do, but they don't. They're a lot harder to do to work as well, I guess. I mean, they're more stable, but they're harder to actually do with just one match or just one little flame. So I'm going to show you an example of how I build my tepee fires and use one match. Alright guys, this is what I'm talking about when I talk about size of the sticks that you should have. If you see a matchstick right here, it's pretty small. But I usually break mine up into 3, when I'm collecting before I start, break it up into 3 different sizes. The first one, because you don't even need tinder, so you're just going to start right with kindling. That's about as big as you want it to get. And as you can see, it's about half the size of a matchstick, maybe 3/4. This first stack, the biggest stick in here, should be the size of a matchstick, and you preferably want to get smaller. And these have to be dry. And when I talk about dry, this is what I mean. When you shouldn't bend at all, it should just snap. And if you can't find those, then you're going to have to get them out of the middle of a much larger stick. If you get a big stick, even if it's been rained on, the center usually won't be completely wet unless it's been submerged. So you've got to hack that open and shave out some little pieces about this size. The next group should be a little bit bigger, about starting from matchstick size up to about 2 times as thick. And there shouldn't be anything in here as big as a pencil. This is about as big as you want to get, maybe 1/4 inch. Then the next group up is from that size all the way up to just a little bit bigger than a number 2 pencil. It still shouldn't be as big as your finger. If you got one that's the size of your finger, that's too thick for building a fire to begin with anyways. So now I will show you how to set it up. Okay, all you need to start with is a couple, 2, 3, or 4 little pieces of stick that have forks in them. Doesn't matter if it's a multiple fork like this or it's just one like this. I usually use 3. You can get away with 2. I wouldn't use 4. You kind of want to make a 3-sided thing so you have a side to get the match under. But one thing to keep in mind is that the mistake that a lot of people make is they make it too tall. You only need it to be about, these sticks are only about 3 or 4 inches long. That's about as tall as you need it, because you want to have room so that the flame doesn't have a huge area to travel before it gets to another stick. So I'll show you how to set this up. Alright, there you can see it. I'm doing it on this tile so you can see the contrast, but it really doesn't take anything special. You just stand them up so that they lean together. And like you can see, that's about as high off the ground as you want it to get. And you can see this matchstick for comparison, maybe like 1 match high. So as high as you want to get. Then starting with only sticks from the first stack, you want to just start putting them on there gently so you don't knock it over. And the second mistake that people make, first one being that it's too tall. The second mistake is they put too many sticks on it. You just want to have enough that you can start to get a flame rising up through it into this first category of stick size. Maybe have 1 or 2 sticks from the second category. Whoop. That's okay. We can deal with that as long as it's not too crowded. But you can see how skinny these sticks are that I'm putting on there. They have to be relatively close together. And once it'll sometimes collapse like that a little bit, but just remember, if you're lost in the wilderness, you don't want to be wasting matches on stuff like this. You want to get 1 match per fire. Or, I'm sorry, 1 fire per match, whatever. And maybe even be able to do more than that, because then you can start keeping the coals, shoring them up overnight. So, maybe have a couple of these a little bit bigger, just to catch. And then have a bunch of sticks from the second category. I put 2 or 3 of them on there to begin with, so that they may light off the initial. And then once you see the flame start rising up through, because these little sticks are thin, they won't burn for very long, so you got to be ready with the next category. Pick the driest sticks from the next category and have them ready to go to sit on there when it starts getting bigger. So I'm going to put this on the tripod. Alright, we'll do it this way. Here we go. See if we can do it with 1. Now we're at the point we can put on the ones about the size of a pencil. And then you're good. Then you can put, once it gets a little bigger, you can start putting whatever you want on there. So as you can see, mine kind of started to fall apart a little bit. Started to fall over. But you want to have a lot more of those really skinny sticks on hand to throw in there when you just have the first little flame starting to catch. Because you can see if the sticks are too far apart, these go out quickly because they're so thin. So you need other sticks really close by to catch. That's it. That was 1 match. Okay, so one thing that you guys probably saw was that the actual tepee started to slide out and collapse right when I started. And that was mostly because it was on the tile, which I had done for contrast. Normally I just clear a patch of bare earth. You want the dirt actually as opposed to like a stump or something, because then you can take like a 6-inch stick, stab 4 inches of it into the ground, just straight up and down with a fork in it, and then just start laying sticks on it. That is the easiest way to make the teepee because it's super sturdy. Like and you can even put 2 like that, or 3, and as long as they're all stuck in the ground, that thing's not going anywhere. So like I said, the important things to consider are, if you're starting with a match, I wouldn't even worry about tinder. Just start right with super small kindling, thin slivers of sticks at the very ends of the branches, of dead branches, dry ones, and start with that. Have them relatively close together. On as long as you leave one side open for air, you can have them pretty much piled on as much as you want, as long as there's a little gap between each layer. If you just have a block of sticks laying up in a layer 3 inches deep, it's going to be the same as trying to light one big log. You got to have space for the flame to move around the sticks. So have them a little bit spaced out, a layer, and then another layer of thin sticks, and have a bunch more of those ready to put on the flame as soon as it starts to light. Because they're so thin, they will burn out quickly, so the flame won't stay in place very long. It'll kind of move from branch to branch. So you got to have more flames or more branches get on there, build that flame up, then start sticking the skinny ones on there. But it's really not that complicated. I'll make some videos of other designs you can use besides the teepee that are they're more stable, but they're harder to get right with the first match, just because of the way that the teepee's designed. The flame goes up, the fuel's easy to put on there. It just works. There's a reason why it's like the Boy Scouts #1 fire starting technique or whatever. But that's pretty much it. I think it's an important skill to be able to start a fire with one match, or don't even think of it as a match, with one flame. Because if you had done like a hand drill or a magnifying glass, friction fire, if you used an air piston, a spark, into a piece of tinder, then you have a little flaming piece of tinder, which is basically your match. You have one tiny little flame. You have to stick it in a prepared fire, and then have it light from that one flame, and you may not get it again. If you have a match, you want to conserve them, but you probably have more matches. If you have a little thing that you spent, however long starting with a friction fire, you don't want to waste that ember. So build it properly, have it open in the front so you can stick it in there on a leaf, have the teepee be as short as you can make it with room to put that in there so that the flame can catch from there. And just remember the principles of size and dryness. Those are the 2 most important things, and you guys shouldn't have any problems. Let me know if you guys have any, what your preferred method is for starting a fire, and I'll talk to you later.